Welcome to the Sleeping Barber Podcast.
So you're in for a treat today. This is one of the brightest minds in the marketing business. Andrew Tindall is here joining us to talk about the importance of creative, the importance of great product design, the problem with AI-generated creative, 3 elements of effective ads, why dull ads are the biggest risk to your business, and a lot more.
Welcome to the Sleeping Barber Podcast, a place for business leaders to get the best and most credible information on marketing, strategy, and innovation. Your hosts, Marc Binkley and Vasilis Douros, share their experiences as they gather insights from the world's leading experts. Now, on with the show.
Welcome back to the Sleeping Barber Podcast. We have Andrew Tindall, the Senior Vice President of Global Partnerships at System 1, here to help us talk about creativity more than anything and just the impact that creativity can have. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
We forgot to say it's jet-lagged Andrew, though, Mark.
Yeah. Straight from,
Poor guy.
Straight from Australia.
Exactly.
Well, I didn't want to miss this.
Yeah.
That makes us feel really, really good, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you on the show. I've followed your content for a long time, and obviously the work at System 1. We've had John and Orlando on before, and you guys do just really fascinating work, and it's really
Great
interesting.
stuff.
It's super compelling. So really excited to have you on.
That's great to hear. Thank you. And you followed my content for a while, but people often forget that I have a day job as well. I run our partnerships and thought leadership at System 1. My LinkedIn person is kind of what I do on a Sunday evening. And you said you'd had John or Orlando on before, or have you had both of them on
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, both at the same time. Yeah.
We
They were really good. Go
We
ahead.
got to get the dog on now, too.
Yes.
I don't remember what the dog's name.
Yeah. So just to set up the conversation, there's an ongoing debate around creative profitability and ad profitability, and Paul Dyson had done some work a long time ago. Well, a couple times now. It's been repeated a few times around the biggest factors in driving ad profitability. What actually drives ad profitability isn't what marketers think often, and creativity is number 2 on that list. But, and actual profitability. But marketers think it's, much further down the list, behind things like targeting and segmentation, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's like this real kind of gap between the actual impact that creative can have and what people perceive it to be. And a lot of the work you've done and talk about on your platforms and your posts is around that kind of theme. So I want to dig in that with you today.
Sure.
But before we get there, I think it's interesting talking about some of your experiences you've had. Like, it's a really interesting and rich background. And so I wouldn't mind if you just kind of gave us a brief overview of how those things that you've done in the past influence where you are today.
Sure. I guess I'll start when I was 16, when I was on a show called The Young Apprentice, which is like the junior version of The Apprentice, which meant that I was just kind of very into...
What?
Did you not know this? Did you not Google? Did you not...
I did the...
No.
Yeah, totally. This is crazy.
Yeah.
Not the Donald Trump one, though, right?
No. The Lord Sugar one, which is the exact same show as The Apprentice, but we're all... Actually, I was 15 when it was filmed. I was in London for 8 weeks doing like loads of business tasks and stuff, which, why is that interesting is because I was really interested in kind of marketing and advertising and that lot, and from a very young age. And then I actually went off to med school. So I went to study medicine at UCL because I have a big dice in my room and I just roll it. I'm like, cool, medicine, let's do that. I have a real deep interest in science and evidence, which is the red thread through my life. The hierarchy of evidence and understanding why something works is why I went to med school. And then I sidestepped into the world of alcohol. So I went to work at Diageo after that, the world's biggest alcohol business. I worked in a lab, in the innovation lab, and I would help them develop new spirits and launch new brands globally. I was actually focused quite largely on Africa then. I then went to work at Bacardi and worked in like sales and marketing for a few years. I then went to work again at Diageo and worked on Johnny Walker mainly on the brand team. And then I ended up at System 1. So
it's wild.
That is wild.
Call it a squiggly career, right?
Yeah, and like the one title that caught me was Innovation Liquid Technologist, which I was like at the first. It makes more sense when you say it as R&D, but I was like, what is that? That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why I was qualified for that role, other than I liked alcohol and I knew about science. My job was literally, I was on a lab bench with a whole team, and I was very junior at this point as well, and at that time, we were really researching how to make alcohol-free spirits and RTDs, ready-to-drink cocktails. But also, I was looking at how to make. I actually don't know how much I'm allowed to share still, to be honest. I'd literally build up liquids in different products, and then work out how to scale them up in factories in different markets. Well, I was keeping really closely aligned with kind of the research and the brand teams at that time. Very unique job. I could not believe. If you look, I love kind of the world of alcohol. I think it's so interesting how much we over-index in kind of emotions when it comes to alcohol. I was 21 and I was working in a lab making gins, and then I would go to factories I went to Ghana at one point. I've always felt very fortunate that I've never felt like I've worked. That's kind of why I work so hard. It's never felt like a day job at any point. I've always felt very fortunate.
Yeah. So coming from the product side and R&D side, does that influence the way you see ads and the branding side of things?
Oh, it's a good point.
Do you think that has had it?
Great question. I agree with Senor Bezos, Jeff Bezos, around advertising. Is a tax on a per product. I do believe that, we're going to talk a lot about creativity, over the next 40 minutes, but you've got to start with the foundations of a good product. My favorite example is always Burger King. I love Burger King's advertising. And then I try once a quarter to go into Burger King, and I can't bring myself to enjoy that burger. The product's got to be great, right? The product's got to have some sort of something unique about, not something of quality about it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Paul Dyson's work. Let's start there. We talked about how the creativity component is a huge factor in driving ad profitability, but so often marketers get that part wrong. And I know you guys have done similar kinds of studies and similar work. Why do you think that's the case? Or is there something else specific to that case or the work you guys have done that sticks out to you?
Yeah, so I just got back from Australia because I was at Cairns, I think they call it, which is like APAC's version of Cannes, which I believe they now have to change the name, and that's probably for another podcast. And I was doing a talk on efficiency in the age effectiveness in the age of efficiency. Yeah. What I mean by the age of efficiency is we have so many tools and models to measure the outputs of marketing and advertising, attribution, brand studies, controlled experiments, econometrics, MMM, that are brilliant. And they're useful at triangulating and optimizing what we do. But they're the outputs. They often end with an ROI figure. They're often far too short-term focused. And we've all become a little bit output metric obsessed, and that kind of chimes with why we might still not be focused on creativity. We all clearly know it's the most important thing that you can control. Everyone's seen the Paul Dyson slide. He's been going on about it for 15 years. And then Mark Ritson did the same research with Effie. LinkedIn have the same research, which show creativity drives a third of brand awareness gains on LinkedIn. NC Solutions have the 5 keys to effectiveness. Guess what? The biggest key is creativity. We all know it, and then it's the easiest way to get a clap at a meeting or an event. Go on about creativity. But we're not doing it because it's difficult, right? There's so many options to optimize your work or throw 20 different creatives into a social media platform and let the algorithm work out incremental gains for you, that actually taking a step back and doing the hard miles that get you creativity. I believe that's the only kind of thing that's holding us back. It's, that Orlando Wood talks about it a lot, give triumph a chance. It's difficult and it's not as immediately measurable. So I think that's why we're not currently there yet.
You said something that's really interesting. I just came out of Google Marketing Live here in Canada, where they kind of do essentially like a roadshow of all the new tech and things to that effect. But a lot of the technology right now revolves around adding endless permutations of creative into the algorithm and letting it optimize towards, what's the most effective. And I actually think there's some sense of, I won't call it a disservice. I don't think it is almost like a disservice to creative, because you're letting the machines, the algorithms decide what is effective versus what isn't. And I think because of this notion, we're kind of pushed down this path of like more creative, the better, but it's actually coming in a sense of maybe diluting what your original message was. What do you think?
So have you ever heard of a guy called Rossa Reeves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the unique selling proposition.
Yeah. He was a brilliant marketing thinker, but one of his thoughts proved deeply problematic, and unfortunately, that's all we know him for now. So the Rossa Reeves fallacy was where you ask someone if they can recall an ad, and then he thought you could measure how good the ad was by proving there was more brand buyers in that group that could remember the ad. That wasn't because the ad worked. It's because when you've bought a brand, you start to recognize, remember, and recall its advertising more. I think that's a fatal flaw of what you're talking about. So brand buyers are going to interact and engage with advertising more. The algorithm is going to show the ad to more brand buyers. How do you grow a brand? By meeting non-brand buyers, reach penetration. Exactly. So that's why you can't trust platform metrics. It will say you're driving more click-through and stuff, but that could potentially be because you're meeting more brand buyers. And that brings us back to the real solution of effectiveness, creativity in driving broad interest from broad audiences, because then the algorithm will show it to more audiences as well.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because it's the equivalent of just running more in branded keywords. More ads in branded keywords.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah.
Wow. I hadn't thought about it that way. Why? So we've got these platforms that are like optimizing for all kinds of things. We've got the outputs that we're looking at. Why do we undervalue the inputs then? Like what is it about the input of creative? Or maybe it's the brief. I don't know. Like what part of it is missing?
So I've luckily only been in advertising like 7 or 8 years now. You've got a feel for these people who've been doing it for like 30 years, where the job was actually entertain for commercial gain, make a brilliant ad, change culture for a brand. Now, these people, imagine the shift in their job. They're sat looking at these dashboards, piles of Excels with like click-through metrics and trying to work out which ads doing best. And now someone's come up to them and going, AI can do like 30 of these and it'll tell you which one's best or something. Jesus. God, you've got a feel for that shift. So why are we not doing the, getting the inputs right? Well, because optimizing the outputs is so much easier and more concrete, right? I used to do it as well when I was running digital campaigns. Like, this one has a better view through. Let's put more money behind that.
Right.
I've made a very tangible impact to my role today. I've added value, and we've all become hooked on that. When you actually think about how you get the output right, that's hiring a more expensive agency, that's putting the time in to build genuine relationships with creatives, in-house or externally, over years, and commitment to a creative platform, and learning about what actually works and not getting pulled down this kind of side path, this side quest of output metrics. And I'm not saying that, these output metrics aren't useful. They are, but we need to get them both right in balance. One feeds the other, and this complete focus on not the input is where we're getting lost. But and kind of the culture's gone as well, right? To actually get that input right again and start creating really creative, effective work, everyone will probably have to come back to the office. We'd all have to start working together again and going into our agency. It would take it takes a monumental shift that is just so much more effort than the alternative.
Do you think we've kind of swung to the other side more then because of you talked about going back into the office, and even, here in North America, it's kind of the tale of two worlds. You have one side where a lot of organizations fully embrace the remote culture, where others are forcing people to go back in. Is there a happy median? Because I think creativity is usually done best when it's done in community, right? And in absence of that, we're kind of in this spot right now where maybe we are a lot more duller than we've ever been, just by system or by byproduct of how our society is currently set up.
Yeah, of course it can be a happy medium. And actually, some creatives work best by if we just, leave them in the room and they can come up with a creative idea. Sometimes, design by committee, it obviously, isn't the answer. But it's about having that kind of, for me, that space for quality thought. So the shift to back-to-back meetings is terrible, right? And very, very obviously detrimental. And it took me a few months to get back out of that habit and actually start time blocking and stuff like this, so people actually leave me alone. And then I actually started seeing that I actually started to write better research and actually do big chunky projects that are going to move things forward. I worked in a big FMCG. I still have friends that work there. They're going meeting to meeting. At what point are you going to go for a walk and actually think about, new creative concepts? How we're going to make those big shifts? How we're going to step off this hamster wheel? So I do think that culture shift is a large part of it. But there's lots of things as well. The proliferation. Oh God, can't even say that. Too tired. The fact that we've gone from one channel to hundreds. We actually don't know what creativity looks like quite yet because it's so new, right? We've only just started to really fully understand how to drive those creative effects from, TV advertising, because we've got the long and short of it and all the work Orlando's done, and there's loads of great books on creativity and how you make effective advertising. These kinds of social ads that rely on attracting and then sustaining attention within 1 second. I don't think we've really got it yet. And there's amazing platforms that have put in the effort in to understand that more. Namely, TikTok is doing a really good example. But we're not meant to fully understand this yet, are we? We can't be expected to.
Yeah, fair. That's
a great point.
You came from the can and con and cans, or
something like that.
Let's say I said that right. Just pretend.
Mark, are you jet lagged too?
Yeah.
What's your excuse, Matt?
Yeah, I got none. I wish I just can't speak. English is tough for me. But so an award show, Cannes Film Festival and Creativity Festival is coming up. There's all kinds of award shows, and so I wonder if you have any thoughts on this about creativity and creative effectiveness and awarding one or the other. Are we kind of pulling ourselves apart by awarding creative campaigns? And I know part of where I'm coming from with this is you put up a really interesting article and referenced an interesting study about our ability to predict an effective campaign just based on creative is like a coin flip. And yet we have all these award shows that are just to celebrate creativity. And then there's separately a stream for awarding effectiveness. Is there, like, it's just the way the industry is, but do you think there's a challenge or a problem with that? Or is that just fine that it's that way?
Creative awards have done an amazing thing for our industry, right? Being able to, one, put time aside to think about this and celebrate this, because it's important, and to fund it, and to give people the recognition they deserve for unique, engaging, emotional ideas is super important. The research you're alluding to is the work in 2016 by Byron Sharp and the gang, which is my favorite effectiveness rock band, by the way, showing that marketers...
It's a banger.
Yeah. The after parties are wild. Showing that marketers are... that research showed
I just can't get the visual. I can't get the visual of like... of Byron Sharp just rocking out.
What? Yeah, with a big kind of
exactly.
What you call liquid death? Yeah, he'd be all over liquid death.
Sorry,
no, he doesn't like me enough already. Let's move on. So, that research showed that marketers are as good at flipping a coin when it comes to selecting work that worked. The two interesting things are, though, that the odds dramatically switched when you worked in marketing analytics. So you actually were able to pick better work, work that was effective, and the odds grew if you'd been in a category for long enough. So I think it was like over 5 years, you actually could start to pick better work. So that's some interesting things there, right? So the people that you'd find in the room at like an IPA judging award, those people often work in marketing analytics. So you start to get a feel around what works and what metrics to look out for. You often don't get that in some of the other kind of judging rooms. And also, we never even look at kind of category expertise either, do we? That's like a random one for judging awards. But yeah, no, so creative awards have a space. My only issue really is that... Let's not forget, it's not the consumer in the room. So everything we do at System 1 is about how the consumer feels. And that's ultimately, who we're playing for here. Work that works with the consumer. So as long as it's creativity that serve in service of the consumer, I think is what we need to focus on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. The next question here, it kind of hits home for me a little bit, and I should kind of open up here and share that I've made a career out of being a performance marketer, right? So lower funnel tactics. How do you hang up on this
thing? I actually can't see it. I feel like I've been tricked.
So no, don't go anywhere, Andrew. What the reality is I've personally seen the light, so to speak, right? Yeah. And the great thing here is I'm able to impact things a lot differently than I have been able to do before, just because I'm sort of close to the data, or the perception that I'm closer to the data than anyone else. But I can help shape change further up. But I'm sure you're aware of the work with Peter Field and Adam Morgan, which suggests like the evolution of those marketing departments, especially around the low funnel tactics, actually has negatively impacted our overall effectiveness against creative. Now, given all the testing that you have at your fingertips there through System 1, have you seen any change in the creative effectiveness over the years?
Before answering that,
sure,
I will. I will say, I have massive respect that you work in performance marketing. Something that really hit home for me the other day was Mark Ritson's recent article on like AI, where he told this narrative. He probably made up anything for a good article, but he was talking to a 29-year-old or something, and this 29-year-old was going, what am I meant to do in my marketing career? AI is going to change everything. We're going to make every asset we need to kind of bottom the funnel stuff. It'll optimize it better. Mark was saying, well, look, I'm 50. I don't care. This revolution is going to come when my career's over. You'd only worry about it if you're like in your 20s and this guy's like, oh yeah, I'm in my 20s. And Mark was like, oh, well, you're screwed. That speaks to the strategy around my career. I refuse to learn the nuts and bolts of performance marketing because it's going to change tomorrow, and it's going to change the day after that, and it's going to change the day after that. I focus on the principles of brand building, creative effectiveness, and strategy. That's what I focus on because I feel like they're going to be timeless. So I have massive respect for anyone who wants to commit their career to chasing how to do performance marketing. That's different every week. So firstly, massive respect. And now to answer your question.
I don't know how to take that. I don't know. Anyway, good thing is I'm on the other side of my career too, so I don't have too much longer. But
yeah. I won't say any more on that. So, have we seen any large shifts in our testing database? So, no. UK advertising is getting slightly better over time. And then we've not seen any large shifts over like 10 years in general in our database. That's because we all sit, whoever's listening to this is in a cozy little echo chamber with us, and, likes to shout on LinkedIn and hangs out in the Groucho Club if they're in London, or, and turns up at these talks and likes to, marketing events are crazy to me. It's like, why do we all turn up and try to mansplain how to do marketing to each other? It's like there's no other industry like that. But in reality, it's like 2% of marketers that turns up to that, right? So the rest of us are just kind of chugging along and doing the work and then going home and having a life. So no, we've not seen any massive shifts in creative effectiveness. To be honest, what we do see is kind of the shifts in what Peter Field pulled data out in creatively awarded advertising, because the objectives of those campaigns were becoming more short term, and we saw kind of erosion of large business effects. But that's just one large subset. If we actually look at all of advertising, there's always a wash of shit. So it's like 50% of it in our database is 1 star. That's always been the case. A lot of it is just kind of wallpaper, keeping the lights on, how we're going to sell more sofas this week. So that's kind of always been the case.
Maybe just for level setting for anyone listening, just talk about what System 1 is and what do you mean by 50% of it is 1 star?
Okay, yeah, sure.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. So we test the input of advertising, whether a work is going to do the work it needs to do. So we pull the creative out of its context, show it to a broad audience of people. We measure their emotional and brand response second by second, and we create metrics that predict what it's going to do in market. So our star rating predicts long-term effects, whether it's going to build those positive emotions that are going to make your brand more salient for years to come, build that equity it needs to do. Les Burnett says, in his amazing How Advertising Works, there's 2 inputs of that. It's broad advertising that people find enjoyable. So that's kind of what our star rating measures. Does it leave you feeling more positive towards the brand? And then we also have a spike rating.
Right.
That second way of doing it, targeted activations that people find useful and interesting. So our spike rating measures how heavily and early branded advertising is, because that will speak more to those who are in the market. So it will capture more demand that week. And also how emotionally engaging the ad is, not just positive, but in general, how engaging it is, because that will change short-term behavior. So we measure the input of marketing, so then marketers can make the input better before then worrying about, how to optimize the hell out of it.
Yeah. And so I don't know if you have the number, but I mean, this is not just a couple of ads that you guys have evaluated, right? Like the number is staggering.
Yeah, so we test every UK and US TV ad as it goes live on air, with a broad audience of real humans. It is crazy. It was John Evans' idea, and luckily he's still here with us, and didn't get fired over it because it costs a lot of cash. But if you think about it, if you're really going to do, benchmark your creative against the market, you need to test everything. So we've got like a database of hundreds of thousands of ads now, and what's also important is that it's with a broad audience. So you can't test a creative with like whiskey drinkers and then compare that to a database of all these other ads test with different audience. We always test with a broad audience, so it's all comparable. And then we work in 90 markets around the world, and we've tested a load of advertising across. We don't just do TV; we do the full mix, including audio as well, and out of home and digital. So we've tested a lot of this stuff, and it allows me to do the research I do. Like this data bank of emotional creative effectiveness metrics is what I do. I take that data and work with our partners, ITV, LinkedIn, JCDecaux, and create how do you do best practice within those platforms. How do you focus on the input and get that right before worrying about these output metrics.
And so with that context now, like it does 1-star perform worse in like actual business outcomes than a 5-star ad? Is there connection that you guys have shown there, correlation?
Oh God, yeah. Otherwise, we wouldn't still be here 20 years later. Reassuringly.
Yeah.
So the most obvious way of looking at it would be the most broad sense. If you take a step back on a campaign level, Les Burnett and Peter Field did that great work over 10 years ago now. Actually, it started before the
long and short of it,
but it even started before that. So looking at that relationship between eSOV and market share gains, where they showed that if you get if you push for 10% extra share of voice, eSOV, so 10% more than your share of market, then you should expect around 0.5% share gain in your market share the next year. We worked with Les and Peter on the IPA on this, and we took the IPA data bank and showed that model was around 25% predictive. That model, eSOV, explained about 25% of long-term market share gains with the entire IPA global database of, I think it was like £500 billion worth of revenue of products.
Wow.
And then we actually added our star rating to that predictiveness. So eSOV is about the quantity and ignores the quality of advertising, which is my beef with econometrics as well. But some people are doing it right. Maybe that's for another chat another day as well. But once you put the creative quality with the media quantity, that model becomes about 50% predictive of market share gains. So, and let's just take a beat there and think about that. So if you know your extra share of voice, your media spend, and your star rating, so the quality of that ad, it explains half of market share gains. That defies, this is why I kind of disagree when anyone says advertising is a weak force, because eSOV and quality of your advertising, admittedly, it's a skewed data set. It's the IPA. It's kind of the larger brands that, are doing things kind of well because they're bothering to submit their data to the IPA. But if eSOV, your media and your quality of advertising, star rating, explains half of market share gains, the other half is product, price, place, promotion, strategy, blah, blah, blah. So if you take a step back and think about advertising over a very long term, then that constant nudging of great creative is actually how you grow market share, which I think is reassuring. So our star rating has been shown. So if you've got that 1 star, no matter how much eSOV you throw at it, you're not really going to get any market share gains, is what we showed with that modeling. And then if you've got a 5-star, you actually get around 3%. So our star rating, so creative quality, is an extra share of voice multiplier. It works media work harder. And then I take that thinking across the media mix. So on radio, if you've got above average star rating, you change behavior. But if you've got lower than average star rating, you don't change any behavior long term, which was some research we did with Radio Sensor. We've got research releasing tomorrow with Pinterest, which shows that if you've got higher than average star rating, you grow your ROAS by 50%. So no matter what channel I look at, emotions and emotional positivity is what drives effects, and that's what our star rating relies on.
It's so interesting, like the data set that you guys have that you're working on and built over, like the investment you guys made for is so fascinating. It's awesome. And so just going back to the point you made about 5 minutes ago,
Sorry,
of all
did
the
I go on a
ads you
rant
guys,
there? I often go on.
no, it's fantastic. I just wanted to bring it back to that point because I think with this context now, it makes even more sense. So, of all the ads you've tested, presumably tens of thousands of ads, or at least thousands, about 50% of them are 1 star.
Yeah.
And is that the same then in B2B?
Oh no,
as B2C?
No. No. I need to check the latest figure, but it's around 3/4 aren't building brand long term and are kind of 1 star in B2B.
Sorry, 3/4 of companies are not?
3/4 of B2B advertising from last time I had a look at the data were at least close to 1 star. I think it's 1 or 2 star. So yeah.
So ineffective.
Ineffective in the long term.
In the long term.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, I mean, having been in B2B, I know there's this desire to have an ad that shows the product in use in like a business setting, and then having the features and benefits featured.
Yeah,
it's
almost like pharmaceutical advertising, like the mode of action.
Yeah, totally. It's indicated in these kinds of patients.
Yeah.
And there's less and less appetite, I think, in B2B. Weirdly enough, for this emotion, because oddly enough, I don't know why exactly. I think it's safer, but oddly enough, it's John Lombardo and Peter Weinberg had said something about this, where like it's arguably the most emotional purchase. Like you could be fired for buying the wrong B2B product, whereas you're probably not going to get defriended from all of your buddies for bringing Coke instead of Pepsi to a party.
Yeah. Completely agree. I mean, there's this deep-rooted belief that B2B is different to B2C, but that just I mean, so who works in businesses? Humans. And who does advertising work on? Humans. So it's daft. And then it's kind of this industry is built up on a different language to kind of gatekeep B2B advertising, like personas instead of target audiences and stuff like this.
Or ideal customer profile,
crazy, right? And all you're doing, in fact, I saw some post on LinkedIn the other day around, had a lot of traction, this post saying, B2B advertising doesn't want to be emotional. People want you to be a rational brand that they can trust. Trust is an emotional output of a brand.
Good point.
Yeah.
I love that.
And
we're going to keep this soundbite, Andrew.
For sure.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. And people who are in that, who are knee deep in that Kool-Aid will hear this and have a visceral reaction and kind of want to reject it and kind of deny it. But, screw those guys, because there's good B2B brands that are doing it right. So I shared on my LinkedIn the other day, teamwork.com's ad that was a sponsored post on my LinkedIn. I stopped and actually sent it to friends who don't work in advertising because it was that funny. And it was a sponsored post that had like hundreds of comments under it, and hundreds of it was actually that good. It had storytelling, it had craft, it had humor, it had a narrative, it had a clear sense of place. It clearly showed the benefits and how they led up into an emotional proposition for the client. Brands are out there doing it, and they're going to have, because also creative effectiveness is about against the benchmark. So if you're that's why Who Gives a Crap does really well from a product point of view, because they're coming from a really dry benchmark. Toilet paper and the product and the advertising is pretty dry. So then when Who Gives a Crap comes in with very emotional products and distinctive product, that differential is huge. So you gain a lot of market share. Same with B2B.
Yeah.
If you can come and do emotional advertising, which to be fair, you're seeing Salesforce do as well, right? You're seeing Salesforce do broad reach emotional advertising with like a branded character in it. They know what they're doing. When the market, obviously they know what they're doing. So why do we still have this belief that B2B needs to be rational and boring? I don't know.
Well, on the B2C side too, you see all those ads from Amazon, like the Christmas one they had this year with the old ladies going down tobogganing.
Yeah.
I mean, if ever there was a performance marketing company that should never invest in creative, it would be them. But here they are investing in creative.
Yeah, that was
Totally.
one of the most effective advertising, most effective ads I've ever tested, actually, and it won a campaign Turkey
That's
of the
insane.
Week. Interestingly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you realize this, but you created your own segue and really wanted to start outlining the opportunity and kind of identifying kind of those, key elements of an effective ad. So based on your experience and based on what you've seen, also the research, and then there's a lot of research out there that outline what everyone's idea of what effective ad is. Would love to get your take on that. What are the elements of an effective ad?
I'm not just going to start rattling off a list of things like you should put a dog in your advertising. So, there is a point of view where we need to take a step back for a second and just think about the role of strategy and business objectives. There's two worlds of strategy. One which falls into the bucket of like ad tweaking, and the other which is looking at kind of solving a consumer goal. So, good advertising should be built on a base of solid business strategy and objectives with solid brand strategy and objectives that then come to a creative platform. So strategy is a purest sense. So strategy for profit is the purest sense of capitalism, right? Strategy needs to be working out what we do, how is that going to make more profit for us? And the answer to that is creative, right? It makes every pound work harder. So is it coming from a consumer insight that ladders up into a goal that we're going to meet with our brand strategy? So that's kind of step one. And then the creative comes into it. So
Yeah,
I would describe creativity as is it unique, engaging, and does it have craft? So is it an idea that is inherently interesting because it's kind of new and a novel way of thinking about something? That's kind of like a very standard way of thinking about creativity. Is it engaging? Would be, does it live beyond the ad itself? Is it culturally relevant? Does it live and breathe with us? Do you want to engage with it? You see this in digital platforms. It manifests itself as trends. So if a brand, and unfortunately it's leading to us jumping on trends and creating a lot of different creative, but with digital, it's, how do we make our advertising feel like it's living with us? And then the third one is craft. So I think craft comes in two parts here. One would be what Paul Feldwick always talks about, which is if something's beautiful, it has value. So if you screw everything up, but you make a beautiful piece of advertising, something that's executed by someone that has taste, and that's why we pay creatives and good production businesses. If it has craft, it inherently has value, and that's a good thing. The second way I'd look at craft is how broadly interesting something is, which is what Orlando Wood talks about a lot. So you can either have showmanship or salesmanship. You can lean heavily into salesmanship, which is a lot of unilateral communication, selling on the product features, repetition, that kind of bottom of funnel advertising that you see in that bottom of funnel quite a lot. Or you can have stuff that's broadly entertaining and attracts and sustains attention. That's where we get into the realm of entertain for commercial gain. Character, incident, place. We call these right brain features or broad beam features. Humor, dialogue, intimacy, music with melody. These are the kind of features that make advertising build more brand effects in any channel. In digital, they'll attract engagement from broad audiences, so that your ad will reach more broad audiences. That what we were talking about before with the Rossa Reeves fallacy. In broad reach channels, if your advertising is entertaining, broadly entertaining, you're going to get more attention from more audiences, and your brand's going to grow penetration. So yeah, that's my somewhat lengthy answer to what good advertising is to be.
That's good.
Oh, it's awesome. I love that entertain for commercial gain idea. Like that's
Yeah.
I love that.
Really
you
good.
might see a new publication written by myself and possibly Orlando with the creatives of Wallace and Gromit, Aardman, coming out in a few weeks, and the title is actually a few months. I need to check the calendar.
Coming
It's
at some
it's
point.
coming, and the title is Entertain for Commercial Gain, because if there's any production business or creative business that does that, it's Aardman. If you ever see any ads that come out of Aardman, the creators of Wallace and Gromit and Chicken Run, they're some of the world's most effective advertising. So we're working with them to really drive that point home.
Wow. Can't wait for that.
Yeah. I have one last question for you, Andrew, if you don't mind. There's like, so I love the idea that, unique, engaging, and craft. So, but where you started with that was it solid business objectives and having good strategy before you get to the creatives. And so having this idea of the, what you're trying to achieve is really important. In the creative process, if you're talking about craft, especially, I mean, that sounds expensive. And so there's this natural tendency for a lot of people to go, well, yeah, I mean, it's a big risk. How are we going to do this? I don't really want to invest in something that's a big risk. So from a best practice point of view on getting a campaign idea through the gauntlet of approvals, are there tips and tactics that you've seen there that work? And it could be including like pre-testing with System 1. I don't know if that's the answer, but...
Okay. Well, look, pre-testing's always the answer. Pre-testing with System 1 is always the answer. Otherwise,
yeah.
Who pays me to sit for an hour to chat shit on a podcast? So I'll go with 3 points. One would be you touched on a risk. It's more of a risk to make a dull advert that will swallow up all your media spend and create no effects. That's the biggest risk you can take. Secondly, the quickest way to get there is the gauntlet of approvals. I would lean on the... I've posted about it a few times on my LinkedIn, and I might be butchering this, but there's this... there's a contract between DDB and Avis Rent-A-Car from the 60s, which goes through a policy that they put in place to make sure that they were going to do effective work together, which basically comes down to we've hired DDB because we trust their creative judgment. And it's always a approve or disapprove, not improve. Find creative partners, be it internal or external, that you can trust to deliver creative for you, creative ideas that they can execute, and just don't mess with them. Like have some faith. Otherwise, then what's all this for? What we doing? Otherwise, you get to the point where I used to do this when I worked brand side. I would get out of home creative and I'd write back different taglines because I was a client wanker. Like you have to work with creative talent that you trust. Otherwise, what's the point? And the third thing would be pre-testing. You don't have to do it with System 1, but do it with a provider that uses System 1 methodology. So leans into real human emotion that isn't priming with anything. So a lot of the time, a lot of pre-testing. So one, there's a lot of like antiquated ideas where if someone's anti-pre-testing, they'll then fall into this. Oh, it involves a focus group. It's stuck in a basement, eating free pizza, and there's 12 of them looking at like a printed out, ad concept board.
Yeah.
What? Who does that anymore? Actually, some people do, unfortunately. But, that's not what good predictive creative testing is now. It's with a large sample. We're not priming with anything. We're measuring their emotional response, and don't fall into the trap of trying to look for key message takeout or anything like that. So that's where you go, oh, did you believe that Johnny Walker's a progressive brand after seeing this? and 70% of people clicked yes, that means absolute that does not mean anything. Nothing.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. Maybe if I've shown them the ad and they're positive and you ask them why they're positive and they go, oh, well, Johnny Walker feels like a progressive brand. Then your creative's doing what it needs to do. But don't fall into the traps of this kind of primed, like at scale pre-testing. And then, and why pre-testing is great is because what we've talked about, you need to make sure the input's right before trying to optimize the output. Or as David Abbott would say, shit that arrives at the speed of light is still shit.
I love this line.
So that's great. You need to focus on what you're putting in the pipe before the pipe. You need to spend some time thinking about the shit before hurling it at people at the speed of light.
Yeah.
And then the natural conclusion of that quote is if you lay golden shits, people don't mind stepping in them. So put some thought into the work to start with, and pre-testing helps with that. And it gives you a natural competitive advantage because the DMA, the Digital Marketing Association, released research yesterday which showed that only 2% of their database uses pre-testing, but around 40% use attribution models. It's like, Jesus, that just makes you want to go to bed, doesn't it? That's just so sad.
Or it shows you the opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if having that advantage over your competitors, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this has been super fascinating. I really appreciate your time. This, honestly, I think it would be great to have another 5 or 6 conversations with you about this topic. We'll put links into you and your platform, or like LinkedIn account, System One, everything else. But yeah, just genuinely so grateful to have you on the show. Thank you.
That's okay. I hope that made sense in my jet lag. I forgot the word for jet lag then. Jeez. In my jet lag state.
You crushed it, buddy. You crushed it.
And really nice to get to chat with you guys about the important stuff.
Yeah, this is great. Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
If you like this show, please leave a review. And even if you didn't, we'd love to make this show better, and your feedback will help us do that. And action.
Action. That was like simultaneously, by the way. Welcome to the Post Pod.
Welcome, V. Welcome to the Post Pod with the Sleeping Barber. I'm good, man.
Sponsored by... Oh, wait, we don't have any sponsors.
Oh, Quadical. That's my company.
Quadical has sponsored by Quadical.
Fractional Marketing Leadership, where all of your marketing dreams come true.
There you go. I'm sold, man.
I'm still working on the tagline, but what do you think? Just as a working piece.
Rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, right? Yeah, let's talk about Andrew.
What he was, I know we've had Orlando and John Evans on, and I don't know, it just feels like they have a really good crew over there, because our conversation with Andrew was just, I don't know, I really enjoyed it personally.
Yeah, he's I love his attitude about a lot of this. Like, obviously wicked smart dude, but also kind of just very frank and fresh, and I love his attitude about it all.
Sorry, I'm just thinking of some of the things he said. He's like, well, Barton Sharp already hates me, so.
Yeah.
What's it up for you?
Well, for me, I mean, the one thing that was like mind-blowing in a way was, like, we talk about it with performance marketing, but when you talked, I think you asked them the question about all the permutations and combinations that come with AI-based creative. And then you're applying, let's say you're looking for clicks. You're optimizing for clicks. You're optimizing for conversions of some kind. No matter what, you're still optimizing your creative, even in all of its parts, to some kind of attribution model, which isn't necessarily designed to get you the reach to the light and non-buyers that you need. And so, for as helpful as it is, it's still more the same, which to me was one of those like aha moments. I'm like, I hadn't thought about it as like the creative impact that is happening on marketing departments.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I really enjoyed the conversation that we went down around like awarding effectiveness versus creativity.
Yeah.
And I know like there's two different schools. Like Work does the effectiveness awards, or I'm butchering it. I don't remember what it's actually called. But then you have Con lines, and I feel like every time I say it, I'm getting judged. Not by you, but probably everyone that's listening.
Oh no,
it's just
by
one
me
of those.
Too. By me too.
And
I'm very judgy.
I just feel like every time, like preemptively, you're like, do I pretend I'm French and I call it con?
Yeah.
Or is it canes? Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's interesting that we've almost separated them and saying like one's effective and one's like just awarding creative, where I think maybe when we're looking to make things really tangible for us in practicality, how do we look at them as one and the same? So the creative execution that you are applying can also be an effective way of, growing affinity, mental availability, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's where we could probably do a better job as marketers internally to kind of stitch those things together and not make them two different things, but make them one instead. And this is where Andrew really continues, and I wouldn't expect anything less coming from a pre-testing platform, really reiterating the importance of pre-testing and making sure that at least notionally you're headed in the right direction. So I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah. I'm with you. Like, I think the con events. Yes,
No, I'm judging. Con.
There was another thing that he brought up that was really interesting. There's that study that was done by it was like an academic study, and I think Byron Sharp was one of the authors, but he had talked about how the ability of a creative panel to judge creative effectiveness is about the same as a coin flip.
Oh, right. Yeah, 50-50.
Unless there's a couple caveats there where they found that if you have had some analytics experience, and then I think, if I'm not mistaken, he talked about it also having another layer that improves the accuracy is having had industry specific experience. So that you've seen ads like that, you kind of maybe have had some experience knowing what's been working before or what's not working. So that context and to be able to thin slice the sort of data and looking at things that way is helpful. But generally speaking, super interesting finding, like you're awarding people for creative and not always, and sometimes creative celebration is just great for the sake of creative celebration. But I think a lot of times, you mentioned this too, like it's great for the team morale and all that kind of stuff, but still at the end of the day, we're still having to answer to businesses that are there to make a revenue profit. And so those things kind of matter a little bit.
I mean, a little. I mean, not too much. We're still the coloring department, so no one takes us seriously, anyways. But just on that, that one comment, it wasn't too long ago where through the CMA, the Calgary Marketing Association, we all got together and we celebrated the incredible creatives that came out of a con, and the fact that as marketers, we do get inspired by that. So that's why I'm not trying to. I want to be careful that I'm saying that it's not important. I think it's very important because I think that's where we can continuously look to push those boundaries of the art of the possible and making sure that we're constantly looking at what can be done, but we just cannot lose sight of the effectiveness side. And because at the end of the day, we're held to, objectives within an organization. We're held to drive both short-term and long-term goals. And we have to be careful on how we trend that line a little bit.
Yeah. Side note, totally distracted. Con, how do you say con? When you look it up in Google, it says K-A-N. Sounds like K-A-N.
K-A-N.
Can?
Like con.
Now I got to listen to it. Hold on. Let's hear.
This episode is brought to you by the Cannes Film Festival.
Can. Oh, there you go.
Can. Oh, so it's like the can. Kick the can.
Like, why would you spell it K-A-N, though? Like, why not just put it the C-A-N, like can? Like a can of Coke.
I mean, I'm with you, buddy.
Can.
So let's stop pretending we're friends. We just say can. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll
So
see.
can.
We'll see we'll see what Connor says, because maybe he picked up an accent when he's ever
He
since
probably
he's been
picked
there,
up a French accent to his Irish version of the accent.
that he already had.
And then he's going to layer on the yacht thing, and it's going to be a whole other word.
I can't wait to talk to him next and just kind of razz him a little bit. But anyway, the other thing that I loved, and I love your take on this, when he was talking about like the 3 areas for effective advertisers to focus on, like the base or the foundation, I think, as he alluded to it. So there was like, number 1 is business strategy. And you had some great questions around this. But one was business strategy. The second was the brand strategy. And then the third was the creative platform.
Yeah.
And all these done kind of almost sequentially. Like, you need that business strategy first. Then you need to understand what is your overarching brand strategy. Then how do you bring to life your brand strategy through a creative platform? So I thought that was a really interesting way of compartmentalizing it and saying, no. And I feel like this tracks fairly well when you think about it. Even back to some of the conversation with Roger Martin that we've had, like at the end of you need to make sure that you have a really strong business strategy that can help actually inform a lot of your marketing tactics or your go-to-market strategy as well.
For sure. Well, and we talked about that study from Paul Dyson around the advertising profitability and how creative was number 2, brand size number 1, creative number 2, and then there's a whole bunch of media metrics that are second, third, fourth, fifth, all the way down to 10. And so, but create, like, that only matters if you get the creative right. And so that's where like, it's not just a matter of getting a AI generated image or Google mixing up a whole bunch of logos and background images to spit out something. Like, I think that's a really key point that you brought up, because having the right strategy really is itself is the differentiator. It's not, the creative is an outcome of the clarity of the strategy, not necessarily that you just happened on a great strategy and you made this great piece of creative.
I'm so with you. And this is where, again, when I think about business strategy, and specifically because I've been spending more and more time with it, but like the playing to win framework.
Yeah.
I think that lends itself really well to set up a brand strategy around that.
Totally.
And I think that's where, how do you tie marketing to business? This is how you do it.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't have a cohesive business strategy, then it's hard then you're just throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks. And that's where sometimes you're struggling to find traction, or you don't have enough research to inform some of your go-to-market strategies. But it all comes down to, what is your business strategy? And I think that's often overlooked.
I agree. I think that's a good point. And it really, I mean, we're talking about creative, but it doesn't have to be creative. It can be any idea, right? Like
anything.
If anyone can have an idea, anyone can have a piece of creative, but unless it's connected and rooted in a business insight and then a business objective, like you could just be throwing blindly darts at a board and not knowing if you're going to hit it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, duck.
Yeah. There's a couple other notes that I had too. There's entertain for commercial gain. I thought was a great line.
Oh, that was my next one too. I love that line.
I thought that was really good. And then the other one was related to the Avis DDB contract that he talked about. He's posted that a few times. They talk about trusting your agency, approve or disapprove, not trying to improve. And then the idea around pre-testing, I think, is really smart. Like, if you're going to hire a company to be your creative agency, like, let them do their job, right? Like, yeah. And a lot of times I don't know that I've been a part of like agency turnovers. I'm not sure that the agencies that we've turned over are always that bad. Sometimes they're just in a bad situation. Good companies in a bad situation, and they can't win.
Or we're just bad clients.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
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 So, because I'm with you, because sometimes, again, our discipline can be so subjective for many people where, if you don't like something, it's very easy to be like, nah, I don't like it.
Scapegoat.
Go back to, go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
When in fact that could have maybe landed the brief better than anyone. But, sometimes it's unfortunate, but that does happen more often than not.
Yeah.
I don't remember whose quote this was. I know you brought it up. You may have brought it up, or maybe it was Andrew, but like, shit that arrives at the speed of light is still shit.
Oh yeah, he brought that up. Yeah. I've seen that quote before. I love that quote.
That is really good.
Yeah.
That is really good. Because even though if we're moving with pace, if it's still bad, it doesn't matter how quickly you try to do it, it's still going to be bad.
Totally.
So that's where, again, root yourself in these foundational, this base, the foundation of a business strategy, of your brand strategy, your creative platform.
Yeah.
To really execute against that. Then you can execute with pace when you have those really solidified. Without them, I think that's where it becomes increasingly difficult.
And it's funny because you're saying at pace, and I agree. But then the process that we're talking about, if you think about writing a brief, understanding the brief, showing the brief, communicating the brief, having the agency understand the brief, having them come back with some kind of concept, going through an approval process, running the gauntlet of the approvals, then moving into production, then moving into the media plan and distribution, or, some of that happens simultaneously, I know, but I'm just saying it in that order. It's not something that happens instantaneously. And so there's a idea there where, the short-term need to deliver something today almost forces your hand to not do creative brand campaigns because it takes too long. You know what I mean? Like, you can just put up a discount today and boom, Bob's your uncle. Yep. Look at that. We did all this. Look at all the ROAS we got. Amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah. I got a data-driven attribution model that's showing me that we're unbelievably effective.
We're really good.
When we're driving sales. But yeah, you're not necessarily doing this. It's doing the right things versus doing the, anything really quickly. Difference between effectiveness and efficiency, I guess.
And at the end of the day, this brings up his point. It was 3/4 of B2B marketing have, what was that number?
Oh, a 1-star rating, or
a 1-star. Yeah.
Ineffective ads, essentially.
In the long term, it was ineffective in the long term,
right?
Because we get down back again to that short term. How do we drive impact today?
Yeah,
you think about the creative tradition in B2B, very product oriented, making sure that you're showing it in use, getting people excited. Yeah. But again, that's finite. That's in the moment right now. And again, I can't. I want to be careful here, is because obviously it drives results. It doesn't mean it doesn't drive results. But in absence of a long-term strategy for both the brand itself, I think that's where you can become somewhat, I know I often use the term myopic, but I'm trying not to overuse that. But the reality is that can only take you so far.
Yep.
And you have to make sure you're thinking about the bigger picture. And I know he brought up characters. Oh, sorry. Did you bring up characters?
No, I was thinking about
that was another
chat with Ella. Yeah.
Another conversation. Sorry, now I'm just blending things.
I was drifting there too.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
long day.
Yeah, but you're right. I think there's lots of things to consider, especially when it comes to creative. It's just one of those things that we really need to spend more time thinking about, and we also need to give it the time for it to work.
Yeah.
To be as effective as it can be, because it's a complementary tool. I get the need for short-term thinking and short-term tactics, but I also get the need for defending the future of the brand and improving price sensitivities and things like that. Right, that matters. Improving the mental availability of products as a first choice thing for a buying situation of X, and it's a whole thing. It doesn't happen overnight.
I just thought of something where sometimes you could be very intentional. Say you're a startup and you're just moving at a pace to get bought up or go public or whatever. So your vision is very short term, or it's very 3 to 5 years out, right?
Mhm.
If that's just part of your business strategy, then I think it's okay that you're not building for the long term. You're just like, you're building for a moment in time. But as long as you identify, as again, going back to what your business strategy is, then that helps inform your overarching marketing side. You don't
For
want to
sure.
be talking out of both sides of your mouth. And that's where I think it's easier for longer standing brands or organizations that have been in the space to really lean heavier on, say, the brand building exercises, just because they've already created that space for themselves. But if you want to be intentional and say, no, we're in this game for the next 5 years, you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
You do you.
Yeah.
Go short term.
Totally.
But just be honest with yourself as well.
Totally. You know what you could also say?
I don't know.
You should go chase profitability.
Oh, please go chase profitability. Everybody loves a little profit in their pockets.
No, like I was thinking about a segue to end this, but also like that's a thing. Like you can revenue and profit are two different things, and so I think that's a good way to link those two ideas together about short-term creative or long-term creative. They do different things, and we talked to Dale about this, but they're different asset classes. Like what was going to work for one isn't necessarily the same that's going to work for the other.
And we know startups, it's less about the idea of profitability, it's showing about the opportunity. So it's more revenue side. Doesn't matter at what cost, but if we see that we can drive revenue, for instance, it's easier to get more funding, secure that funding, get bought out, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I think this all plays into it.
Yeah. Super interesting. Anyways, Andrew's a great guest. Super fun.
Great conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks. If you've made it this far, Andrew, thank you for spending the time with us. We really appreciate your insights, and we'll look to have you back on.
That'd be great. Okay, V, until next time.
Go chase profitability, my friend.
I will. Take it easy. Ciao.
Ciao.